Are there any motions to take note of answers? Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. And I rise to take note of the answer provided today by Senator Fifield to the question that I asked. So we've had Senator Fifield come into the chamber since we've returned this year, rabbiting on about the great success of his NBN rollout, except we need to let him in on the secret that the rest of Australia knows what a dog he's rolling out. It's a lemon. It was only supposed to cost $29 million. That's what they said. They said that the market had come in and put any additional funds that were required to finish the job, but instead of doing that, what they'd rolled out was so bad that the government couldn't get people to invest, and they've had to tip another $20 billion in themselves. So now, at a cost of $49 billion, we've got a copper-loaded lemon distributed across the country. And this morning, the government's second-rate NBN took another hit. The NBN CEO, Mr Morrow, has been quoted overnight as saying that already he's considering building a 5G wireless network to bypass the copper NBN, the one that this minister keeps coming in and telling us is really good, bragging about his numbers. Every time he says another 10, another 15, another 20,000 Australians have had the Malcolm Turnbull model of the NBN inflicted on them, I feel the pain and suffering of our local communities. For all of those people out there who have had a terrible time managing the connection to the NBN, for all of those businesses, and let me say 83%, not a small number, 83% of small businesses say they lack confidence in the government's NBN delivery. Now, that's got to be a fail by any measure, yet this minister, this senator, keeps coming in and telling us what a great job he's doing. The gap between reality and Mr Fifield's version of it is absolutely unfathomable. I cannot understand why he doesn't understand the Australian people's concerns about this copper-based technology he's rolling out. Well, the reason that we had Mr Morrow say that he's going to have to go to 5G is because he knows what the government have been trying to deny for a long time, that parts of the Malcolm Turnbull version of this NBN are unreliable and corroding. There are thousands of Australians out there who have what the NBN euphemistically called service class 0. That means they don't know when they're going to get to you because they've got big problems. And why have they got big problems? Because they're trying to force information down a copper line that's landing at a node at the speed of light. They're trying to splice together 21st century technology with a technology that should have been left in the last century. And where those two things meet, it's not working out. Mr Morrow even knows. He's saying, well, it's failing. We might have to go to 5G. But this minister didn't want to answer those questions. He doesn't understand the dog that he's inflicting on the Australian people. Today we've seen Senator Fifield failing once again to take responsibility for the mess that's been created by this Turnbull government. And by doing so, he's absolutely failing to understand and recognise the real impacts that this mess is having on ordinary Australian men and women and the businesses right across this country. Every single member and senator who is in this place will have had hundreds and hundreds of Australians contact them in their offices and say, please help me out. I'm about to lose my absolute patience with the NBN. I cannot survive this any longer. We had evidence to the NBN committee on the Central Coast of New South Wales of one gentleman at McMaster's Beach who lost in the order of $70,000 from his business in the lead-up to Christmas because this government just doesn't get it. They just don't understand, and they continue to deny the reality that businesses right across this country are being compromised in their capacity to compete in a global market. They're being compromised by constant dropouts. They're being compromised by slow speeds because the technology that this government's inflicted on them won't deliver what they need to do business in the 21st century. Australians are concerned about the costs, and our government should be concerned about the cost to maintain an old copper technology that is just redundant. We know that our company, NBN, is an Australians' company. It belongs to all of us. And under the custodianship of this government, what they've done is failed to deliver us the technology we need for the 21st century. They can call it Malcolm Turnbull's multi-technology mix, but we know it's Malcolm Turnbull's mess.
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Senator Betts.
Thank you, Deputy President. Can I simply remind the honourable senator opposite that hyperbole is never a substitute for facts. The simple facts are these. Labor missed every single one of its NBN rollout targets. Let me remind the Senate of that. Every single Labor target for the NBN rollout was missed. It was not achieved. It was not delivered. Whereas, under the coalition government, we have in fact been smashing the targets. Let's not forget that under Labor, NBN fell 83% short of its 2013 rollout target. So that which it promised the Australian people, they failed to deliver by a factor of not just 1 or 2% a rounding error, but by 83%. Now, clothed with that record, you would have thought that the Australian Labor Party would have some sense of decency and seek to sidestep any debate about the NBN, given its shameful record. But in typical Australian Labor Party style, what they seek to do is mislead the Australian people. They do it time and time again. At the last election they did it so despicably with a Mediscare campaign, a false campaign, a dishonest campaign seeking to mislead the Australian people. Now today they're doing it again with the NBN, in circumstances where their policy was developed on the back of an envelope and failed to deliver, whilst they were in government, 83%. However, I'm pleased to report that 7,000 houses a day, or premises I should say, are being connected every working day as we speak. 7,000, Senator Reynolds, 7,000 premises are being connected every single day. And of course, when you roll out these facts, what do you get? A cacophony of interjections from those opposite, because when you hit them with the facts, they are unable to deal with reality. So, Madam Deputy President, can I simply say to those opposite, and more importantly to the Australian people, don't look at what the Australian Labor Party promises, look at what they actually deliver. They promised us this grand National Disability Insurance Scheme, underfunded, but they had to roll it out on the basis of cheap politics and completely underfunded. They had health policies without any funding attached to it. They had an education policy also without any funding attached to it. So they'll always speak in the big language of hyperbole, trying to get the Australian people to vote for them. But you then ask, does the rhetoric match delivery? And with the Australian Labor Party, you've got to give them 100% for consistency. They always constantly fail to deliver on that which they promise the Australian people. So the simple facts are 83% failure in relation to their 2013 rollout target. That is what Labor had when they were in government. There was a change of government, and we have now sought to clean up the mess that we inherited. What a lemon we did inherit from the former Senator Conroy and the Australian Labor Party. Just as much as today we are seeking to clean up the mess of the National Disability Insurance Scheme, much as we are trying to clean up the mess Labor left us in relation to the budget, much as we are trying to clean up the mess they left us in the health and education portfolios, having left us with all these messes, the Australian Labor Party then seek to come in here and tell us and pontificate to us and the Australian people how we should be doing better. There is the phrase, Madam Deputy President, that actions speak so much louder than words. And what I would simply say to the Australian people and those opposite is, don't listen to Labor's words, don't listen to their hyperbole and rhetoric. Have a look at what they actually deliver, and in comparison,
Thank you,
we
Senator
get
Abetz.
the 100.
Your time has expired. Senator Billick.
Madam Deputy President, and today we've heard about another saga in regard to the MTM rollout. That is, for that side of the chamber, that's the multi-technology mix. To this side of the chamber, it's obviously known as Malcolm Turnbull's mess, or even the multi-technology mess. So I've said in a number of speeches in this place over quite a number of years that given the increasing demand of Australian businesses and households for fast broadband, Mr Turnbull's second-rate copper national broadband network will largely be redundant by the time it's built. Now, with the emergence of 5G mobile services, we face the prospect of more homes and businesses abandoning the network in favour of mobile-only services. The 5G providers like Telstra and Optus know what consumers need and want, and they're willing to provide it. A study by Venture Insights, co-funded by the ACCC, reports that as many as 30% of households could abandon the NBN and switch to wireless. 30%. Yet NBN's corporate plan continues to cling to the assumption that only 15% of users on the inferior multi-technology mixed network would abandon the NBN for wireless services. NBN Co's recent announcement about 5G technology is obviously an admission that the second-rate copper network has failed. The MTM rollout has been a disaster from the beginning. The cost of the rollout has increased from $29.5 billion to $49 billion, a $20 million blowout, including a recent potential $450 million blowout to the cost of the troubled HFC network. But the problems with the government's second-rate network don't end there. Oh no. The copper-based network costs more to maintain over its lifetime and yet generates less revenue because it cannot reach the high speeds that consumers are willing to pay for. It's a less reliable service with slower speeds. In some cases, users who have purchased a copper NBN service have ended up with a slower and less reliable service than their previous ADSL plans. Senator O'Neill mentioned concerns of people in New South Wales. Well, in Tassie, let me tell you, and Senator Brown I'm sure will attest to this over there, that there's areas in Tasmania, in Hobart, 20 minutes from the city centre that the NBN left off the map to start with, and then when we had consultations, it took them months and months and months to be able to get these people any form of access to the network. There's other areas in Tassie I know that have been left off the map altogether, and Tasmanians, I think, are really underwhelmed with the government's approach to the NBN. The copper network, as I said, costs more to maintain over its lifetime, and yet it generates less revenue because it cannot reach the higher speeds that consumers are willing to pay for. As I said, it's a less reliable service and it's much, much slower. In some cases, the economics of copper are nothing short of a liability, and it's no wonder the consumer complaints to the telecommunications industry ombudsman have gone through the roof. Demand for broadband speeds is such that it's inevitable that most Australians will soon require and demand a full fibre network. But the rollout of the copper network means that the pathway to the fibre network will be expensive and it will be wasteful, an expense that could have been avoided under Labor's plans. So we see lots of dissatisfaction with Mr Turnbull's second-rate NBN reflected in a number of surveys. So let me put some facts on the table to refute some of the things Senator Abetz stated. According to Reckon, 83% of small businesses lack confidence in the delivery of the network. 83%. 54% of small businesses believe they will be left behind as the digital economy develops, with technology infrastructure identified as a key barrier to starting a new business. According to the New South Wales Business Chamber, 43% of businesses are either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with the NBN, 43%. So we've already wasted enough money and opportunity on the farce that is the MTM. The longer we take to commit to Labor's plan for a full fibre rollout to 93% of premises, the more we risk left getting behind in the global economy. Now, I just want to point out that Rebecca White, the Labor leader in my home state of Tasmania, understands this, and that's why Tasmanian Labor has committed to work across all levels of government and the private sector to facilitate the rollout of fibre to the premises across
Senator
northern
Billick,
Tasmania.
your time has expired. Senator Steele-John, are you seeking the call? To speak?
Yes.
We've still got another speaker on the list, and then we'll come to the crossbench. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy President. I too rise to take note of Minister Fifield's answer. And I've got to say, after nearly 4 years in this place, it never ceases to amuse me, the chutzpah of those opposite, talking about the NBN and other projects that they implemented and that they developed and completely stuffed up. The list is long. Pink bats, school halls, unfunded NDIS programs, and the NBN is yet just another one of their failures. So after the mess that they left us, and I would like to remind those of exactly what you left us. So here we have a large, probably one of the largest infrastructure projects ever in this country. And how was it developed and it was planned? Wasn't it on the back of a wine-stained coaster in a VIP jet? With some great idea your colleague Stephen Conroy had, let's do this NBN. And, oh, he hadn't been drinking, so it was just a wine-stained coaster. Well, how does it explain this project? That's even worse if he actually came up with this plan sober. I mean, good Lord. So let's have a look at this. After all of their pontificating, let's have a look at what they left this government 4 short years ago. After 6 years of Labor, how many households do you think were connected after 6 years of Labor? How many? Oh no, Senator, there was more than none. There was 51,000 across the entire country under Labor who were connected. Labor's fibre to the premise NBN policy would have cost $30 billion more under their own figures and taken 6 to 8 years longer to complete. Now, one of the things this project, like so many of the others, show that there's 2 maxims in politics. You never let the Labor Party next to taxpayers' money because you know they're going to stuff it up, and you certainly never let them near any large-scale project management, particularly on infrastructure, because they not only will waste taxpayers' money, they will completely stuff it up. And we've seen that with NDIS, and we've seen this with NBN. And so Labor paid. Let's have a look at the facts that not even those opposite can dispute. Labor paid $6 billion for the NBN to pass just 3% of households. I'll say that again. So you paid $6 billion for the NBN to pass 3% of Australian premises. And in fact, the rollout was so badly managed by those opposite, the contractors actually downed tools and they stopped construction in 4 states. Remember that? Those opposite try very hard to whitewash history, how much you spent, how little you delivered. 51,000 households, tell me I'm wrong, and it cost $6 billion to roll it out for 3% of premises. And so what do you think, senators? Under Labor, how many rollout targets on their own dodgy planning do you think they met? How many targets did those opposite meet in the rollout when they spent $6 billion to pass 3% of households, with 51,000 households take up? How many of their milestones do you think they met? Not a single one. Not a single one. So, what is it like under coalition after 4 years? The NBN is now available to half of all Australian premises, or more than 6.2 million. 6 years, 50,000 households. 4 years, 6.2 million premises. And it has over 3 million active connections. And all Australian premises will be connected by 2020. Now, the Coalition's NBN and the facts are irrefutable, and nobody over there can actually deny these because they are facts, reported facts. Our NBN is connecting more users every 2 weeks, than Labor connected in 6 years. So every 2 weeks we are connecting more than those opposite did in 6 years. So that's 30,000 premises per week are being connected, compared to, so 2 weeks, 30,000 premises, 6 years, 51,000 premises. Despite all of the howling of those opposite and trying to rewrite history of this project, the NBN is on track and to be available to 2/3 of Australian premises this year, with more than 9 out of 10 premises in 2019. And as I said, all Australians will be connected by 2020.
Thank you, Senator Reynolds.
Those
Your
are
time
the facts.
has expired. Senator Urquhart.
Note today of the appalling answers from Minister Fifield to the very serious question from Senator O'Neill on the parlous state of the broadband communications under his watch and under the watch of Prime Minister Turnbull. Senator O'Neill sought a simple answer from Minister Fifield on the cost of NBN Co. CEO's thought bubble to potentially build a 5G network because the copper network is already not up to standard. Minister Fifield had no idea, just like Minister Fifield and Mr Turnbull have no idea about how much their multimedia technology mess is going to cost. Minister Fifield said that the NBN has a mandate to conduct the rollout under the multi-technology mix, or MES as it's commonly known, which he says will see it rolled out fastest and at lowest cost, not with best quality. The Liberals and Nationals are happy with quick and dirty broadband, definitely a direction from the top. The minister found it hard to mention 5G in his answer, and one wonders why. Does he not support the CEO? Does he not want Australians to harness the immense opportunities that will be afforded by 5G? And does he not want NBN Co to invest? We just don't know, and he probably doesn't know either. One thing the minister did say is that he believes that his broadband rollout will cost $30 billion less under a full fibre rollout. But the minister never presents the rationale behind his ridiculous argument. That's because the minister's argument just doesn't stack up. NBN Co Bill Morrow and CFO Stephen Roux said to a Senate committee that the $30 billion figure is not a continuation of Labor's full fibre NBN, but what a full fibre NBN would cost if it was restarted in 2015. So I repeat, stating that Labor's full fibre NBN would cost $30 billion more than the multi-technology mess is just not true. It wasn't true when Malcolm Turnbull first said it, and it isn't true today. It's a bad political argument with no logical underpinnings. The minister should consult with his NBN Co executives, who, it has to be said, are doing the best they can with a very bad statement of expectations from Minister Fifield and Minister Cormann. I want to share 4 simple facts about the NBN rollout that Minister Fifield should also address in the near future. 4 facts that tell the story tale of how the man who supposedly created the internet in Australia completely fell into a pit of rotten copper, of dashed hopes and of bungled deadlines. Fact 1 is that 3/4 of all fibre to the node premises will not be able to reach 100 megabits per second. Fact 2, over 200,000 premises on copper will not be able to receive the minimum 25 megabits per second that was promised by Prime Minister Turnbull. Fact 3, there are around 80 million hours of network downtime per year across the multi-technology mix. And fact 4 is about $100 million has been spent purchasing almost 17,000 kilometres of copper wire. They're not my numbers. These are numbers that were provided by the government and NBN Co to the Senate committees. There are 4 facts that are part of the reason why the NBN Co CEO is out in the press today saying that he is considering his options. The copper isn't working, it's not actually cheaper than fibre, it's not as effective as fibre and can never be more effective than fibre. The overuse of copper is all about a bad political argument made by Mr Turnbull and Mr Abbott almost a decade ago. They were so desperate to find a point of difference with an excellent Labor government policy, and the people of Australia are now suffering as a result of that political point of difference. In Tasmania, the Turnbull government claims that the network is complete, but there are still thousands of premises that can't get connected, and no matter how many phone calls people make, and despite NBN promising the micronodes would be connected by October last year, it is not finished. And worse still, for most on the northwest coast, my area where I live, one of the poorest parts of this country, there is no upgrade path for fibre to the node to full fibre. So while the big cities of Launceston and Hobart skate ahead with gigabyte connections, the northwest coast is left behind by this government. And then when the minister is asked about a 5G as an alternative, all he can do is bleat incorrect facts and political spin. Thank goodness this government's time is almost up.
Your time has expired. So the question is that the motion is moved by. I'm presuming that both of you want to speak on a different matter.
Which I understand is my entitlement.
That is your entitlement. I, however, didn't see who jumped first. Senator Steele-John, did you wish to speak on this matter?
No, I wish to take note of the answer of Senator Fierravanti-Wells.
So Senator Hinch takes precedence because he wishes to speak on the same matter. Thank you. Senator Hinch.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. On the issue of the NBN, I heard Senator O'Neill saying today that the NBN is a lemon. The NBN is a lemon, and it is a lemon. But the Labor Party doesn't understand it was their lemon first, and at least the government has tried to make lemonade out of it. And I just find it so surprising when people, during question time, waste their questions rather, because Senator Fifield was attempting to answer the question and trying to answer it correctly and with his version of the facts. But it shouldn't surprise me when it comes to question time and answering questions like this, Mr. President, because even Senator Cormann today, in answering a question I was putting through him to the Minister for Defence, said that my question was, quote, bordering on inappropriate. Bordering on inappropriate. I suppose you would think it was bordering on inappropriate when the Dorothy Dixons from his side of the chamber, they come up. The first question is usually some anodyne, milk toast, Dorothy Dixon, that side always seems to put up. That's question number one. The question number one is a milksop. Question number two is usually just excruciatingly boring, and question number three is some saccharine sort of press release. And I would say that if we could get rid of questions number 2 and 3 in question time, we could get more questions in, we could have more transparency from the government, and I think the Labor Party and the opposition benches and the crossbench especially would be happier for it. And I'm now, Mr. President, prepared to concede some time if you still want to go with Senator Steele-John.
So I've got to put the question moved by Senator O'Neill. The answer of Senator Fifield taken note of. Those of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. We can move to Senator Steele-John.